Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the first in our webinar series on revisiting your core skills. So today we're looking at pitching and managing clients. I think certainly winning new business and very importantly, retaining clients long-term is the lifeblood of any freelance business. So actually how we engage, communicate and manage those relationships is key. Here at the Work Crowd, we often get lots of freelancers who are asking us for our top tips and insights, and is there a secret sauce to this particular area? So by way of an introduction, I'm Madeline Waitman. I'm co-founder of the Work Crowd. The Work Crowd is a global network of professional freelancers working across the marketing, communications and PR mix. Our award-winning digital platform matches and connects businesses to the right individuals from within our network to help them build their businesses. So today we're very lucky to be joined by the fabulous Samantha Henry. Samantha's got 18 years experience working both agency and in-house for a variety of different consumer tech, entertainment, and travel brands. So she's worked with businesses such as Mealy, BT, Nintendo's, TGI Fridays, Singapore Airlines, and many more. Samantha now operates very much as an independent through her own agency, Starlight PR, and covers consultancy, activation, influencer, outreach, celebrity partnerships, launch campaigns, event management, and many, many more. And she also is the founder of startup Pup Chic Boutique. I don't know if she's got her doggy with her today, but keeps herself very busy. So actually Samantha first joined us I think it was last year, for a panel discussion where she touched on her unique approach that she uses to, first of all, best identify her clients' personalities and therefore how best to manage those client relationships. And so from, I think, my own experience here at the Work Crowd, obviously observing our clients and freelance interactions, I found it really interesting and also could see really how effective it would be. So we're very lucky that Samantha's kindly agreed to join us so that she can share her secret sauce with you all. I think we've had over 160 signups to this event, so it's evidently a top topic. Now, we do like these sessions to be interactive. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, there is a question section there. So please do use it. Do ask any questions that you might have, and we will look to try and address those at the end. So really over to you, Samantha, so you can tell us a little bit more about things.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So I've got a couple of slides that I'm going to pull up to talk through, and then very much we'll just be chatting through all the different colours that your clients can fit into and how to manage them, and then answer any questions you may have. So I'm just going to share my screen.
And if in doubt, basically Samantha uses the Myers-Briggs colour scheme, which I think is brilliant in terms of actually identifying her clients' personality types. So yeah, I'm certainly interested to find out more.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about the Myers-Briggs colour scheme, and it's definitely worth exploring, having the training to identify what colour you are, because it can help you to see what your strengths and your weaknesses are, to help you sort of improve on your weaknesses, but also to highlight and celebrate the great strengths that you have. But hopefully from today of actually talking through this, you might find that you'll be able to identify who you are, where you fit into it, and where your clients fit into it. So what we're going to cover today is to look at the colour traits, and sort of, you know, the strengths and weaknesses of all four of them, how to adapt your client management accordingly based on trying to identify which colours you think your client is, the expectations that your client will have, so the kind of watch outs of things that they're going to be expecting, so you can make sure that you're always one step ahead, how to shape your management style accordingly for your client, and then also how you can apply this to when you're pitching for new business, how to sort of try and find out, as we were talking earlier, weren't we, even just looking at the brief can give you a bit of a clue as to where the client might fit.
And if anyone is wondering, Samantha has kindly agreed that she will share this presentation afterwards. So at the end of this, everyone who signed up, we will be giving you a copy, so you can rerun this webinar, but also a copy kindly that Samantha will share of the presentation and a brief write-up. So you don't have to make a million notes.
Perfect. So the Myers-Briggs colours they're split into 4 colours, and people normally have one dominant colour and then a secondary colour that they can kind of dip between the two. Everyone has a bit of all 4 colours, but the other 2 colours tend to be a little bit weaker in terms of how people act and behave. A lot of people, quite interestingly, could have completely different colours at work to their home life. I think one of the reasons why I found this so useful is there are some people like myself who are almost all 4. So whilst I have the sort of the dominant colours, the other 2 colours are not that far behind. So I think because there's a little bit of all of that in me, I find it quite easy to pick up on the similarities that I have with the client and try and match my management style accordingly. So the way the colours work, that you would always be the dominant of one colour, and then your secondary colour would be the one next to it. So if you were blue, then you would either be also a little bit red or a little bit green. You wouldn't necessarily be the opposite colour. You'll also find that if you are a green person and your client is a red person, you're always going to find it quite difficult to work with them. So red people tend to be quite a lot of CEOs. They're quite, just very, very focused, and can sometimes be quite short, or, they don't have time, that they're not worried about feelings. They're about getting the job done and the right job done. Blues are very factual, structured. They want lots of detail. They're great attention to detail people. So they're the ones who are always going to pick up on typos and things like that. Greens are very loving, caring, kind and considerate people. They often make the greatest managers, but they also quite hard at taking feedback and things. And then yellows is where a lot of PR people sit. They're very creative, they're really bubbly, they're fun to be around, life and soul of the party. But the next slide I'm going to take you through is to show you the sort of the good and the bad of each of these colours, because we all have positive things about us and we all have negative things, and they tend to fit within each colour. So starting with the blues, they're very cautious. So if you're trying to suggest them of doing something outside of the box or something they've not done before, they're going to be really nervous about doing it. So you're always going to obviously need to reassure them and kind of give them lots of evidence of examples and things to show that this is the right way to go. They're very precise. They're always going to have lots of questions. They're quite formal as well. Reds, as I said, are very, a lot of CEOs, they're competitive. They want to do the best. They will demand a lot of time. They're very strong-willed. Yellows are really sociable, dynamic, creative, enthusiastic. And then the greens are patient, sharing, caring. On a bad day, blues can be quite indecisive. So trying to nail them down for a decision can be quite hard. Suspicious is quite an interesting one, that they are more of a glass half empty than they are a glass half full, finding it very hard to trust people. Reds on a bad day can be very aggressive. They can be quite short. I'm very blue red, and I know if I've got a lot going on and I feel like someone's waffling, I will want them to just get to the point. So I know that that's something in myself that I have to kind of watch. They can be quite controlling, that they want to be on top of everything. So even if they trust you that you're doing a good job, they'll still want to be involved. Whereas a blue will just, if you give them all of the information and keep them updated regularly, they'll kind of let you run with it. Yellows, I always sum up yellows on a bad day is like if they're juggling, they can't juggle lots of things. They're not the best multitaskers. So if suddenly they've got lots of work going on and then a crisis comes in, they're just a bit like frantic and I can't cope with this. Greens can be quite almost not necessarily a pushover, but they're the ones that kind of won't necessarily speak up. So you can kind of see, like, against a red person who's being quite ballsy and overbearing, a green person will probably just sit back and take it. They're the sort of people that if your boss said, can we have a quick chat, their instant thought is, I'm getting fired, or what have I done wrong, as opposed to we're just going to have a conversation about something. They always go to the worst thought about themselves.
Worst case scenario.
Yeah. So let's break this down by each color, and we're going to look at how they work, how you can adapt the way that you work to them, and then also watch out points. So first, looking at reds, they have a short attention span. They don't have time to chat about your long weekend. Actually, I realize I'm going to take these off and just talk to you through them, and then we'll share the presentation afterwards, because I think that will be easier. Otherwise, it's too many words on the screen. But yeah, basically, they're the not sort of people that when you call them up that they are going to ask about your weekend or want to have a chat about it. They might do, but it's the kind of thing of find out, how busy they are, how long they've got to talk, and then you can establish that accordingly. They're really, as I said, myself, when I've got a lot on, kind of just get straight to the point. So when you're sending them emails, they should be short, or if you feel that you've got a lot that you need to send them, I find breaking emails down into subheadings and bullet points. So you can just talk through each of the sections that you want to get across, but it's in really concise information for them that they can skim read the email and get out the information that they need. Status reports and contact reports, they're the sort of people that they don't want a 2-page contact report that's got, it was noted that this was said. They're literally just going to want to see what the actions are of what's on their table of they have to deliver and what you're going to deliver. And that could be an email or, a Word document. I often find a Word document, an email, which might have everything that we talk through, subheadings by each element of the activity that's going on, and highlighting in yellow their actions. So it's really easy that if they don't need to recap what we're doing, but they've got it there if they need it, they can just focus on what they need to do and add that to their to-do list. Death by PowerPoint, these people, they're the ones, those you'll probably know when you've got a red client, when they brief you and they say no more than 5 slides or 10 slides. They are really not the sort of people that want to see 50 slides. And I mean, you can do a presentation that you can send over to them that's got all of the break slides and things, but when you're presenting, just think about what you can skip through, or what things you can move into appendix to show that you've done all the research and all of the information's there, but you don't necessarily need to talk through it. So when it comes to watch outs with them, one thing I would say is that always prepare to be challenged. So one of the good things about red clients is that they know what they're good at, and they've hired you because they know that you're good at the job that you do, but they're always going to want to make sure that what you're suggesting and recommending to them is actually, is the right thing to do for them to get their head around it. So they're always going to challenge you. They'll listen to your ideas, but they might challenge your thinking, asking you, have you done your research, or can you back up why you think it will work? They won't necessarily want you to show all that evidence, but just give them the confidence that you've done all of that, so they know and trust that this is 100% the right route that they should be going down. Don't congratulate yourself is another one. We all know when we get an amazing piece of coverage, or some of the work that we've done has really paid off, that we want to send them an email saying, look how amazing this is. these clients want to tell you that if they think it's good. They don't want you telling them. So the way to do it is actually don't use the word great or amazing. Give them the facts, show them, we landed this piece of coverage, it includes all of our key messages, it has a link, etc., etc. Give them all of those facts to show it is, so they will come back to you and say, this is great, well done. That's the way you'll get praise from them. Not if you go and tell them that something is great, they're going to look at a flaw in it of the web, they didn't include this key message, or they didn't include a backlink. So if you want them to see it as something good, just give them the evidence and let them make that decision. And so if you kind of stick to these things with reds, if you have things that don't necessarily go well, as we always have things that, something goes wrong or something hasn't delivered, they're always actually going to be a bit more understanding, because you're not saying we're done amazing and sort of trying to avoid the elephant in the room. But also in that sense, if they have any concerns, don't get defensive with them, because it will frustrate them. Acknowledge their concerns, and flag if there's any actions that you can do to rectify it, or just acknowledge and apologize and move on. They'll be far more grateful and trusting of you for that. Moving on to yellows. So as I said, yellows, a lot of people in PR, marketing, creative industries are yellow. They're bubbly and fun. They want lots of attention, and they want to be involved in the process. So if you have a yellow client, let them feel part of your team. So where we always talk about we're an extension of a client's team, they want to feel that they are part of your team as well. So if you're having a brainstorm, invite the client to see if they want to join into your brainstorm. Or when you're sharing your ideas with the client, give them, ask for their thoughts on if they have any builds, so they really feel that they're using their creative juices, and they're not just managing, a freelancer or an agency to run the work. They actually feel part of it, and that it's their idea as well that they can go and shout about to people. They are unlike reds, they are very personable, and so they will want to chat about the weekend. They will want to get to know you on a personal level. So there might be things that you find out about them that you might want to add on to the weekly agenda. Say they are moving house, that you might just want to remind yourselves that every so often on your calls to ask how that process is going and let them talk about it. They want to have a bit of a friendship with you, not just a formal work relationship. They also, will want to hear from you regularly. So not just when you've got your formal weekly or bi-weekly calls, but find excuses to check in with them and send them things, to show that you're thinking about them and they're always in your thoughts and that you're always working on their brand. Watch outs with yellows. The ball is never in their court, so they can be very scatty. So if you've sent something to them, don't think that's off my list now. It's with the client for them to come back. They're going to need reminding. If they've got a lot going on, it's something that could slip through the cracks. It's a ball, another ball that they can't juggle in the many that they have. So always make sure that you're checking in with them, that they're on the case with their actions, or if you need to push back timings, etc. Always offer a supporting hand. Even if you don't necessarily have the time to take on more work, just knowing that you're there and that you're offering to help will sort of put them at ease. But also, you never know if they've got a lot on and you're offering some of your time to help out. There might be an opportunity for you to get some extra fee by offering to take on some more work. Always under promise and over deliver with them, because if you share something or a campaign, they get really excited about it. They're going to go and shout about it internally to say how amazing, or we've got this piece in the Sun confirmed that's coming out this weekend, and then if it doesn't land, they could flip, and because they've gone and shouted about it internally. it's then going to make them look bad. So that's where they could then turn on you, that you told us this was going to happen, etc. Especially yellow, who has a bit of red in them. So I always say to under promise and over deliver with them. So if you know a journalist has said something, a double page spread is coming out this weekend, don't really confirm. Give them that it's a warm lead, that it looks like they're keen on doing something like this, subject to editorial decision or editor's decision, but don't make out or imply that it's a firm that it's going to appear, because we all know you never know what's going to happen in the news and things might change. So anything you tell this a yellow client is always going to go and sell that in advance, because they want to shout out and celebrate. Greens. So as I said, these are the sort of the kind, caring. I like to think of them like pandas, loving, loyal. Everyone loves them. Everyone loves working with them. They're the nicest people to work with, but they're also very soft and can be a bit of a pushover. So, in terms of a client and managing them, always encourage them. So they almost need to feel like you're there supporting them in their career as much as you are their business. So, if they come back and give you a suggestion, or they make a tweak to a press release or something that you've written, praise them and say that that's a really great ad or a great build, because they need that personal boost. Also, you can really help to arm them to sell you internally. So especially if you're pitching, or there's an idea that they need to go and get signed off by someone else, they might not necessarily feel comfortable enough to take your idea and go and take it to their boss and talk through it. So really think about how you can arm them with all of the information. Say they've got a boss who is blue or red, who's going to challenge them or have lots of questions. Make sure that you're helping them to give them the confidence that they've got all of that information to answer that. Or you could offer to go and help them to present it, to get things over the line. Watch outs with them. I actually think that greens can be sometimes actually the most worrying of clients, because they'll never tell you if they are unhappy. They won't give you feedback. They'll say everything's great, and then if it's not, rather than having the confrontation of telling you the truth, they'll just put you on notice and find someone else to do the work, because they won't want to trying to fix the problem with you. They'll find more uncomfortable than just replacing you. So they're always one that I think you need to watch out for and encourage them to give you feedback. So it could be that actually you pick out things yourself that you've identified that you could have done better, and flag that to them, so they kind of feel like they don't have to tell you, because you're self-aware and you're acknowledging it yourself. And do sort of use that as an opportunity to encourage them to share their thoughts with you, to make sure that you can keep them as a happy client. And as I said before, sort of, nurturing them. These are the people that, they won't show their disappointment. They'd always celebrate your work. So they're always going to say that things are great, even if they think they aren't. So these are people that, you would celebrate and say how great a piece of coverage is, but you might acknowledge that it doesn't include a backlink or something like that. So you're kind of giving them the opportunity of the feedback that they don't want to give you, that you're identifying it yourselves. And always try and involve them and show and celebrate what they brought to the table. So if they had a suggestion of including a stat or a certain in an image, and that's been used, then flag that and say, it's great, your great idea of adding this has also had pickup as well. So that definitely helped us to strengthen the coverage. To it gives them the confidence that they're good at their job, because they're people that often think that they aren't. And then on to blues. So these are the super organized, detailed people. They're the ones that are always going to spot typos and errors in your press releases, and probably rewrite things that pretty much say exactly the same as you've already said, but just in a slightly different way. because that's who they are, and they like to feel that they've added something. They're always going to have lots of questions. So be prepared for the questions. Even if you haven't answered them in information that you've sent over, know that those questions are going to be coming. So always, with attention to detail, as I mentioned with them, they are going to want a status report with as much detail as possible. They were going to want to know that things have been noted, unlike the red who just wants actions. They'll want as much in there as possible. With a presentation, they'll prefer detail over pretty slides. So actually sometimes you might find that they might prefer having a 2 or 3 page word proposal with rather than PowerPoint slides, or slides of here's the idea, this is how it will be delivered, and sort of walk them through each stage. Because they're opposites of the yellow and they're less creative, they can't necessarily work out in their heads how something will work, how it will land in the media. So you almost need to treat a blue, I always say, as thinking about if you were explaining something to an alien. So really, detailed, simple terms, as if they don't know anything about PR or how it works. Not to necessarily the level of, we will then pick up the phones at 10 a.m. and call the news desk, etc. But, giving them we will be going out to these type of media, and these are the stages of how we'll pitch, what information we'll be collating, that all the assets, that sort of thing. Watch outs with them is definitely these questions. Always think ahead before sending them anything. What is the question that they're going to ask on this, and try and make sure that you've answered it, so they don't have any questions at the end. You're never going to get with a blue where they don't have any questions, but if you can get to a point where they've got 1 or 2 instead of 20, then you know that you're winning with that client. And also, don't take things personally. It's really hard, and it can be frustrating when they keep pushing back on your ideas, or they're asking so many questions. Just remember that they're overthinkers, and they will think through something so much that they'll think about the worst case scenarios of what could go wrong, and be that sort of more glass half empty than full. Again, this is a little bit of a similarity to a green here, whereas green is that personally, blues are that with their work. They, before they invest and spend the budget, they're really really cautious about it. So just make sure that you're not taking it to heart if they're pushing back, or you're finding it frustrating, or they are putting 5 rounds of amends on your press release. It might be worth, with these sorts of clients, of agreeing a process with them. So if you're writing press releases, and I do this with some blue clients, where I'll create a briefing document for press releases. So I ensure that they give as much information as possible of the key messages that they want included, any stats that they have, all the product information. So it's almost getting them to brain dump and write out the press release, and then it makes it really easy for you to convert it and get it exactly right the first time. And again, working with the blue, there is a way that you can look at possibly getting yourself some more fee. If this is the sort of client who is going to want you to spend a lot of time on planning, then it might be that you explore having a charge for planning time, or increasing your fees for creating documents, because there's going to be lots of rounds of amends. So then the next thing I just wanted to jump onto, and then we'll look at sort of taking questions from you all, is how you can take this and apply it to pitches. So obviously sometimes when you're pitching, or most of the time, you're not really going to know what color that the clients are, unless it's someone that you've met before. So obviously, if there's things like that, you can try and have a call with them in advance to talk through any questions or run through the brief. That will really help you to try and look at how they respond, how much time they've got, to try and identify. But also things like looking at the brief that they've given you, how how much attention to detail is in there. Is it, is it a really detailed multi-page brief, or if they just sent you a very top line email? Going and, looking at LinkedIn and, their experience of where they've worked. If they've previously been agency side and they've worked in lots of the sort of corporate agencies, they're probably going to be a bit more blue red. If they've worked in some small independent or consumer agencies, they might be more yellow green. But also, go and have a look and see if you can find their Instagram, or see what they're posting about their personal life as well. You can also ask them when you get a brief of how they like to receive things. Do they have a particular limit on the number of slides that they like to see, or how they like things presented? Would they like to see anything in advance? So, a red person will very much want to see the whole pitch in advance, read through it before they have the pitch with you. And then actually when you pitch, because they've read it all, they probably don't want you to go through it slide by slide. So how you would start a pitch with a red person in the room or on a Zoom call would be to ask them if they've had a chance to read the deck, and where do they want to start? Do they want you to talk through your background and your experience? Do they want you to go through your insights and your strategy? Or do they just want to jump straight into talking through the ideas? You might even find that they've read through everything and they literally just want to jump to specific slides, talk through their questions, and chat about the budget and the KPIs. So I think reds are quite easy to identify just simply by asking them a couple of questions, and then you can really tailor how you pitch to them. Yellows, I always think with a yellow person, they're great to have a tissue session with, see what ideas that they get excited about, and get their thoughts in advance, but also give them an opportunity to feed in. They'll always have ideas to build on your thinking. And so those are things that you can then incorporate into your pitch, and identify that you've included the great idea that they had. It was just so fabulous, you had to include it because you thought it was a great build. Obviously that's gonna make them feel that you're already working with them collaboratively. What I struggle with as dyslexic there. Greens, always ask them what's going to help them to look successful. So get their personal brief as well as their business one, and make sure that you're incorporating that into your plan. So for example, if their business has quarterly internal targets. So I know when I worked, before I went in-house, I worked agency side with BT, and from one of the clients learned that they have quarterly targets, and if they meet their quarterly targets, then they get bonuses. And some of the people are purely led about, they just want to get that bonus. So they're not necessarily going to go and do something that is a bit of a gamble or a risk that may or may not get results, because they just want to hit their KPIs. So, when you find out something like that's what's going to make them look good internally, you can help use that to help shape the ideas that you come up with. That maybe it's coming up with something which is a bit safer, but is going to deliver, as opposed to doing something that is a gamble, but if it paid off, it would be 10 times better. With blues, don't be afraid to have too many slides. You could actually have two versions. I'd always avoid sending them something in advance, because if you send them something in advance and the slides are top line and they're out of context, they're going to already come armed with a million questions to ask you, and they're going to be focused on those questions rather than listening to what you're talking through. And actually, when you talk through it, you probably are going to have answered a lot of those questions anyway. So I would have a version that you present, which is very top line on the screen, so they can focus more on listening to you talking through the ideas, and then having a follow-up presentation that you send to them that almost has the script of everything you talked through. So it's got the slides there in a lot more detail, so they can go back and recap and reread through everything, because they are going to want to reread through everything after the pitch before they make their decision. And again, always be prepared for questions. Definitely ask them if they want to ask the questions as you go through the pitch, or if they want to wait till the end. You'll find with both blues and reds that they'll probably want to ask them as they go, whereas a green or a yellow will probably feel more comfortable just grouping them all at the end. So that's kind of the top line. I realize I've been talking for quite a while, so it would be great to see if anyone's got any questions. Also, someone's asked about where you can find a test to find your color. There's an agency that does that, so I'll include a link in the follow-up as to where you can find that and do the test. But it's really, you get sort of a PDF or printout document of pages that talks through it all, and it will have lists and lists and lists of everything that you're good at and all of your weaknesses, and it will show you for your work life and your personal life as well.
And how have you, think about yourself, Samantha, and think about your own colour. So you touched on right at the beginning that you're sort of a bit of a blue stroke red. So then actually, are there clients that you feel, actually, I work really well with these? Are these likewise blue reds because you get how they work, because you work like that? Or actually, do you find that perhaps working more with yellow, for example, yellow clients who are very bubbly, outgoing, that there's a sort of complementary relationship? What have you found in terms of your experiences there?
Yeah, definitely. I think in my career, I've always been the one that's been put on difficult clients, and difficult clients are normally the reds and the blues. And so I think that's probably why, because I almost tick their boxes in my thinking. So I kind of think the same way as them. But, that said, because green is my weakest color, but I know for me that I'm very green when it comes to that. Can we have a chat? I am that, oh my God, what have I done wrong? So I just tend to have, I'm not everything, but I seem to have little bits of each color. So with the yellow in me, that I am very creative and sociable and bubbly, but I am very blue when it comes to when there's lots going on. I don't really get stressed, and I don't feel this stress over juggling lots of things. So I would probably say a green would probably be a client that I maybe wouldn't work with, because I might find them frustrated, or I really have to tone down my red if they are, I've only got a half an hour call, but every call that I'm on with them takes 45 minutes because that you actually, in that initial pitch process, you identify what sort of client is this, actually, is this someone I can work with or I can't? Is this going to be hard work for me or not? And therefore, actually, is this someone I want to work with, and is it best use of my time? I think that's a quite good, valuable. Because if you're green and the client is clearly a red, it's mentally that's going to be quite hard for you, because you're going to feel like you're constantly being kicked and you're not going to be happy in your work. So actually, is that the right person to work with if you feel that you can't adapt or you can't take that stuff on the chin?
So Mike has asked, Samantha, you touched on at the very beginning that most people are a blend of two colours, and given that, and given the guidance that you've given in terms of identifying those colours and how to work with them, how do you juggle that blended personality type where, I suspect from what you've said, it's unlikely that you're a red and a green, which are sort of polar opposites. It tends to be that actually in that spectrum, that those colours, they may be one or t'other of the ones that sort of sit close by them. But how do you manage that? Like, for example, with yourself, blue, detailed orientated, red, quite short and wanting to be to the point.
And I think that things like that you might not identify straight away, but you might have a client who on a good day is blue and on a bad day is red. And so you'll notice that when they're really busy and they're stretched, actually they don't want a lot of that attention to detail. They want it in short form. So then what you might find that you do is you might do an email which is top line and bullet point, and then you might have a Word document, or you might go below, which is then into a lot more detail. So you're kind of giving the best of both, or, you know, finding out when you have a call with them, what have they got going on that week? Is it a busy week? You know, how long have they got for your catch-up call? And then kind of use that information to feed and give you an idea that, you know, right, this week we need to tailor slightly how we're reporting to them, or the information we're giving, or how long we're on the call with them.
I think, you know, that's really good advice, because I know from, you know, our own experience here at the Work Crowd that what you said throughout is actually asking the client how they like to work, how they want to report, what are the communication tools that they want to use, how often do they want to communicate, how, you know, how much detail do they want. But then I think likewise, providing that sort of clear structure. I also think a little bit, it's a bit similar when you have a CV, the ability to scan through and look at and grab that key information, but actually, if you have time, that you provide that bit more detail. So yeah,
there's a couple of questions in the chat as well before we just jump to Mark. So Layla asked, when meeting clients for the first time, are there any specific questions you can ask? So yeah, absolutely. Questions are really the way to identify, you know, so asking them, how do they like reporting? Do they want weekly calls? Do they want weekly update emails? When you're, say, for example, working on a campaign or you're selling into media, do they want to be told updates daily, or, you know, throughout the day? So you might have like a yellow client, for example, who will want to be told, like, they know that you're selling in, so they want an update at lunchtime, and they want one at the end of the day, and they want to know how it's going on. And you might be saying, well, I'm actually only going to do, you know, I'm going to do my whole 3 hours on this client in the morning and just send an update at the end of the day. So the way that you would work with that client is you would kind of give them half the information of what you've done in the morning and save the other half, even have the email already drafted, and then send it in the afternoon. So they kind of feel like you're keeping them updated all the time, when in fact you've just split out your update into two separate ones. Whereas a red will literally, like, you know, give me bi-weekly, or just tell me when you've got something confirmed. If not, I'll have an end of week. I don't need an email at the end of the day just telling me you've gone to X, Y, and Z if you haven't got any feedback or results yet.
And I think what's, you know, another reason why actually it's really important, as you say, Samantha, to actually ask those questions at the upfront, is that actually as an independent consultant, you understanding what their expectations are in terms of actually what reporting, the amount of time that you need to invest into that, you then need to actually build that into, well, actually, what do I need to charge them? Because if I'm needing to report to them on a daily basis in huge detail versus a weekly, well, actually, that's additional time and should therefore be additional cost. And I think then effectively, you know, if that's the case, then that gives you the ability to communicate that to the client. And I think managing expectations is really key.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a blue client will appreciate and understand that budget, whereas a red, the reds are going to be the one who are going to cut. They'll be like, well, I don't need a weekly call, so you can cut that from your budget, you know. Whereas blue is like, no, they'll be willing to pay for those things. So, you know, blues and yellows are probably your best clients, because there's opportunity there to make more money off them. Whereas your reds and your greens are the ones that you're always going to be trying to make happy, and that, you know, always nervous that they could be one that you could lose if you know, if they don't like that if your management style clashes with them, or you're not getting results, etc. So those are the two that you probably need to work the hardest on, but using these tools can help to maintain and have those clients. You know, I've had red clients that have followed me in my career because I've, you know, matched to their way, and they know that I listen and I appreciate how they like to be managed and reported to, that
well, I think,
person.
And I think that's a really valuable feedback, because you know, certainly seeing obviously how freelancers interact and manage those client relationships, you get it right. Actually, clients really value that, and that then gives you the opportunity to leverage that relationship to ultimately win more work. We all want to win more work, but we also want to retain those clients, and actually happy clients are clients that you're much more likely to keep. Now, Mark sounds like he's got the client from hell, which with every spectrum color person, in the off chance you have a client that perhaps is a Jacqueline Hyde who literally can change change color, personality type from day to day, how do you manage that? Or can you, or is that client you just don't want to work for?
Very hard. I mean, I think if there's a way that you can find out like what they've got going on, like, when you have a weekly call or a monthly call, finding out what's going on, and like when they've got launches, or like when they have internal like when they have a meeting with their boss, or when they have to present, or things like that, and making a note of those. Because if you know that I have a client that I know has a board meeting every Tuesday morning, and I know that if I talk to him after that meeting, he's going to be completely different if that meeting's gone well or it's gone bad. So he could come out of that meeting feeling frustrated, and then he's going to be quite bad, red on a bad day. So, if he comes out of that meeting and he's very red yellow, sorry. If he comes out of that meeting and it's good, he's going to be really yellow. He's going to be really enthusiastic, and right, we've got this budget, and what can we do, and blah blah blah, and can you get me a proposal tomorrow, kind of thing. So I think identifying when they've got things like that, and maybe finding an excuse to drop them a note or check in afterwards, after that meeting, to find out what they've come out of it as, and then you can adapt.
And I think worst case scenario, just going back to what you'd said earlier, which is actually always ask the questions to begin with. You ask the right questions to begin with, you can gauge where they are, what mood they're in. Likewise, in your reporting, if you have top headlines, you have key information, but worst case, like you say, yellows, that you maybe time it if you know what they're doing, that you manage their expectations in terms of what those deliverables are, so that you're hopefully covering all the spectrums.
I remember working with someone who always at the start of every meeting or pitch would say, how long have we got? Because that's quite useful to know that, right, we can't go over, and especially if someone's read. But they would also ask, you don't need to look at your phone or anything. Now, I personally think if that person's read and they're going to be short attention span, lots going on, they're going to need to keep checking their phone because they're waiting on an email, or there might be an important call. If I were a read client and someone that was pitching to me asked me if I needed to look at my phone, I'd probably instantly be like, yes, I do. Shove off. I'm not going to work with you. So I wouldn't personally recommend asking that question, but it is a way of finding out what color someone is. But the purpose of that is to make sure that you're getting their full attention. And you'll definitely notice things like that where red is probably will just sort of nod along, or that they'll be checking their phone or whatever, whereas a blue will be writing in their notebook.
How have you, or have you got any examples of how you've used the insight? So i.e. you've identified, let's say this is a red client, or conversely this is a yellow client, to then effectively win more work or leverage more work. Have you been able to use the insights that you've gathered to do that? Is there a different approach that you would therefore take?
Yeah, definitely. I think especially if you've got a blue client who's quite cautious, and you've got this great out there idea that you think is, quite ballsy. I don't know if this brand would go for it, but if they would, it would be so good for them. A blue client is just not going to sign off on that. So it's almost, like have it in there as an idea, Because, you know, I think Gary had added a comment about you could be pitching and you can have multiple colors in the room, which I think is a really good question, because you're not always necessarily got one person that you report into. You might report into 2 or 3 and have all of the colors there.
Well, exactly. That with the blue client, you actually say, look, can we get the rest of the board on board?
Yeah.
And let me pitch to them the process, so that actually it's not a hierarchy,
Yeah, exactly. So, you might have where you've just got a real top line slide that you talk to for the red. And if you're not sure if they're red or a blue, you can have follow-up slides that go into more detail, and you can ask them of saying, is that clear? We have got more slides to break it down of how it will work. But we can save that for the appendix if you just want to move on to the next idea. And that's quite a good way of doing it if you've got multiple people in a room. And the hierarchy of the ideas. So sometimes you might go, this is our best idea, but think about the business as well, because you could have someone that is quite yellow and bold and creative and excited, but they've been working at that business for so long and been told so many times, no, we can't do that, that they'll start to almost become they'll start to become a bit more red, or it might almost be swaying them round to the green blue, because they're just knowing that we're never going to get this signed off. So it's thinking about that in terms of the priority of your ideas. That's where a tissue session can help as well.
When you say tissue session?
Yeah, so a tissue session is a term that I've always had in the agencies I've worked in, but it's basically where you get some time in the diary with the client to just talk through a few of your ideas, or you might talk through this, the strategy of where you're thinking, to sort of get the client's buy-in to go that yes, you're going down the right path, which is quite good to do before you pitch, because if you've completely missed the ball and gone off in the wrong direction, when you go and pitch, it's totally wrong. But they're quite a good way of getting a steer from the client. And this would, especially if you're working with a bigger agency. So I did it a lot when I was in-house at BT. I let the agencies come in and talk me through their ideas. I mean, some of them interestingly just came at me with like 30 different ideas, and I was like, this feels a bit like you just let's throw everything at the wall and hopefully something will stick. Whereas another agency came in and just said, this is where we're thinking with our strategy, is that right? And I was like, yes, great.
So really much more consultative, really. And I think actually what you're talking about here sort of leads on to probably just looking at the time, our last question. Can a business stroke a team be a color? It might be actually a blended, made up of lots of individuals who may be red, yellow, whatever, but overall as a team they are generally a blue, or actually the business, given what they do, that the brand personality, the values, that actually they sit within there. So then when you're thinking as a consultant, and how, when you're talking about your ideas and all of those good stuff, actually how you approach it and what's going to work and what's not, is that possible? Does that work?
Yeah, you can absolutely have as a business that they're very blue, and that they need all of this detail, but the actual client that you report into is quite red and doesn't need it, that they don't have time to read through that, but they know as a business that they have to have that to get it signed off by other people. So that can absolutely happen. And businesses that use this Myers-Briggs, where they actually test their employees before they hire them, know that the perfect team is made up of all 4 colors. So if you work with teams, if you're hiring people in, you want to have the green, if you're a red, the opposite of you, but you need all 4 colors. So you might not necessarily manage that green. The green might be an account executive and you're a director, but you've got a blue and a yellow to nurture that person. and, you know, bring out their other colors in them, so they're not the, you know, but then the green of them can get, you know, fed round to help you to be more understanding and acceptable of people. So the perfect team is made up of all four. And yet when you're pitching to a client, you might have more than one color. So it's kind of trying to bring the, you know, show that you can accommodate for all colors. So even actually showcasing, you know, having a slide on how you report, and just having, you know, different ways you could have different packages, you know, as we were saying about charging more for the, you know, the more admin heavy, you could actually show a side of, you know, here's our ways of working, and we have 3 different packages for you, and, you know, which one works best for you.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, you know, and I think just as a final, I think it's, you know, it's really fascinating, really interesting, and something actually personally I'd love to find out more about. I think as Samantha said at the start, she'll include a little link in terms of actually where we can find out a little bit more information on it. But I think it's really important, as you said throughout, if we ask the questions from the outset, listen to the answers, that will then be able to provide those insights and intel that actually, as independents, we can then use to provide a bit more of a targeted and strategic approach to winning new clients, or managing those client relationships, so that we retain and maximize them to the full potential. So, you know, thank you so much, Samantha, for joining us. I certainly feel like I've learned a lot, and I'm sure the audience have too. As I said before, we will be sharing all of this with everyone. So yeah, that would be great. We've got another event that's coming up on the 19th of May. So that's going to be a panel discussion. It's the 19th of May at 12 o'clock, which is on modern PR in 2022. So that should be a really interesting one as well. So thank you everyone for joining us, and yeah, thank you especially to you, Samantha.
Thank you.
All right, bye guys.